Right. Um, Hello everyone. Uh, this is episode 6, I think. We have Scant and Nomad, and yeah, uh, we have a bunch of topics that is Nomad, Nomad, and Nomad for this week.
Stay together now. We've
Making me
spoken to each
feel,
other.
Yeah.
making me feel all obsessed about myself. I mean, yeah, but thanks for having me on. Firstly, yeah, appreciate that. Big Kit Kat fan here.
It's still weird that people that I have fans. I still feel a very odd feeling when someone says that and is being genuine.
Why? Why do you think that is?
Because I've not been like an on-camera person, so it's also weird at events when people recognize me and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're this person."
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just kind of comes with the territory, though. Like, if you work around talent, then there's obviously going to be that kind of boil over there when the hardcore fans, and also they love knowing you and like getting insights into you and other people, in like the secondary people in who aren't on camera, as you say, but doing like the backroom stuff. I think these people really like to hear from, because they feel like they're getting more of an insight than anybody else, right? That's what it means to be a hardcore fan, right? Like you're trying to get in and know more and like see more and experience more from than any other fan, because you want to feel as connected as possible to the scene. So yeah, people like you help them do that. So yeah,
To be honest, people think I know more than I actually do, or at least that's how I feel like. I actually don't know that much. I don't have that much inside information, but probably more than most of the fans.
yeah, it's always one way or the other with that sort of thing. Though, like people either expect you to know, like how Dendy's sister is doing, or they're like amazed when you can tell them what series is coming up next. That's a very I feel like
What's the
that's
score?
yeah,
Well,
what's the
Kit
score?
Kat always knows
Ugh.
what series is next. That's like she probably has PTSD from that at this stage in her life.
Yep. Yep. I I mean, I'm very good at schedule. I've gotten very good at schedules. I've gotten very good at timekeeping.
Time zone master.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was
Fuck.
gonna call that. Time zone master.
Right. The first topic is your charity run. Do you want to go to the way beginning, to where you actually came to the idea that you should take part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a horrible person. I was always scheming, I always wanted to be like, I wanted to use this, a gathering following, once I got kind of the ball rolling with sort of thing. I've always known that I was going to try and like make something happen, and it was definitely going to be like the Cancer Research UK kind of thing as well. So yeah, I mean, I basically always knew that something like that was going to happen, and then Tough Mudder has been like it's kind of like I wouldn't call it a big thing over here. It's probably bigger in America, but it's definitely something I'd heard about before, and I was like, I never could have done it really. Like I really like never in my life have I been fit enough. Maybe I went to do a season in Canada. I did a lot of skiing there, so maybe after that I might have. But before, I still don't think I would have been able to do it because uh, it takes a pretty good degree of fitness to be able. It's like 10 miles and 25 obstacles,
Oh,
all very
jeez.
like upper body heavy. Um, and yeah, I mean, so it was a lot of work to kind of get to that point, especially starting from a point where I was kind of like going to the gym maybe once or twice and climbing a little bit. So I had to like completely switch up my diet. But I mean, it's just good to, I think, almost like a responsibility where obviously you always have that imposter syndrome where you don't really feel like you kind of, even though I've only got like 1,000 followers or something tiny like that, I still feel like it's not really, it's just kind of a product of what I do rather than who I am. But and then I'm kind of like want to kind of do something with that. I've got a lot of people who would potentially support me in something like this, and yeah, friends, family, and all these people, they've been amazing. So it was really cool, and I never expected to each. I initially planned to raise I think £700, and then I was kind of thinking about it a bit more, and I was like, ah, you know what? Let's go to $5,000. And then I was like, well, actually, that's a little bit crazy. You know, we'll scope it down to 2K, and 2,000 is what we ended on. Still, I wasn't really expecting to kind of like get all the way, but I mean, yeah, huge shout out to EPOS because those guys just like messaged me being like, yeah, you know, Podem was like, yeah, we're gonna just fill up the prize pool on that one because you know, the donation goal on that one, and yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, managed to get to the full 2K.
So what does it actually consist of? Because it isn't an actual run, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a long time between the objectives, right? So the obstacles are kind of like maybe 70% of it, and then the running's like 30% of it. A lot of people didn't run, a lot of people walked around it, but we kind of like wanted to do it properly. So we decided to commit to the running aspect, which was hard. But yeah, I mean, the obstacles are kind of crazy. They're so as I said, there's 25, and they're all about mostly either upper body strength or climbing, that kind of thing. You know, one of them is about a 10-meter slanted plastic sheet, kind of, you know, plastic board, you know. So you have to get up it. You have to get up and over it. And the only way to do that is by climbing on each other. So you have to basically form like human pyramids who are leaning against this thing. And then like pushing people, and like people like standing on your shoulders, and you're like, "Are you okay?" Like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And then you like hesitate, put your foot in someone's neck, and they're like, "Whoa!" And you're like, "I'm sorry." You try to like heave each other up, and then like the people at the top have to like lean down and try and grab each other down, reach down and grab the people who are trying to come up, and you're kind of all slipping and sliding. You're all covered in mud as well. But the worst ones 100% were the electrocution ones, because you know, when you see electrocution in something like this, it's we did not expect it to be bad until we tried to run full pelt into. They would have like these wires dangling down over the mud, and you're supposed to like kind of, you know, swing your way in between them. But some people just run at them, and we were like, you know, it was the very last obstacle, and we were like, screw it, we're just gonna run at them. You know, we come all this way, and we're like 3, 2, 1, and we just charge in, and then like the electricity just shoots down my arm all the way down into my thigh and into my calf, and just zaps my calf like 3 times. I hit like 3 different wires. I completely like face plant to the floor. My friend just did the exact same thing. We're just like screaming, like, "Oh my god!" It turns out it's like 20,000 volts or something. I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know electricity, but it hurt. It was real bad. Yeah, I got like 3 zaps going through my leg and 1 through my hand.
Oh
I think
my
I hit the
God.
hand with the floor, and then that was the shortest way to grounding. So my hand, yeah, it was madness. But yeah, I managed to do 24 of the obstacles out of 25. The only one which we couldn't do was this one where you're kind of like dangling, and you have to kind of like shimmy across just with your hands. Your legs are just dangling below you. And we chose a harder option because there's a harder option on all of them as well. And we chose a harder on every single one. But this one we couldn't do because like they had like rock climbing holds, but they're all like kind of slippy and muddy from the end. It was the very end of the day, from going over that all the time. So we could just kept slipping off. We couldn't do it, unfortunately, which was kind of lame. Do you want to say 25 out of 25, but 24 ain't bad. And yeah, it was good fun.
But now you got something to aim for next time. So
That's true. Yeah, we can go bigger. We can go better. Yeah, there's a couple of other apparently harder runs as well, which you know, when you get into these kind of communities, you always find about the next big, better thing. So I don't know. That's for next year though. I've just had a week off. It's funny because I know it's one of the things too. Exercise and Dota. Like, yeah, I haven't really done either of those for like a good just over a week now. Because I mean, once the run was done, I was like, knew that I was gonna have like a week where I just eat what I want and turn into a potato for a week straight. It's been great. It has.
and what kind of distance is the run? Like if you do the run?
Just the running is 10 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, but the obstacles don't really take up much time, you know, much space. They're very short obstacles. You know, it'd just be like climbing over something or you know, jumping over something, or they're about maybe. I think the longest one is called the Mud Mile, which is weird because it's only about 400 meters.
I mean, why are they measuring in miles?
Because Britain's really messed up. We like to kind of measure things in a mixture of meter and miles. short distance, we generally use meter. You don't really hear people using feet here, yet we use miles when we're talking about roads, or miles per hour as our, measurement of speed. The reason for that is the reason we use loads of different units of measurement as well is because when the rest of Europe went to metric and we were still in imperial, it was at the time of when we were still at war with France. So that meant that we didn't want to do what France was doing, and it was Napoleon that kind of introduced the whole of Europe to the metric system, and we were like, "Fuck that guy, we're keeping metric." So we didn't want to do that. So we kept a lot of things still in imperial, and we stick to that now because yeah, I mean it's just the ultimate sign of British stubbornness, really. Pretty mental.
Why the Queen of Pain cosplay? Why any cosplay?
I've been really insistent on not calling it a cosplay because like I see the cosplayers, I see the work that was being put in, and then you look at what I was wearing, and there is an ocean of difference between the effort I put in and the effort other people put in. I mean, yeah, I had white face paint or white body paint all over, but the body paint had kind of gone by the journey by the
That's
time we
not
drove
Queen
up
of
there.
Pain. She's like blue or something.
She's like slightly blue, yeah, but like I mean the blue was like proper blue, and she is pretty pale Queen of Pain. She's mostly white. And like the black eye thing's coming down as well. That lasted until although one of the really bad obstacles actually it's called Arctic Enema because you jump down a little chute into an ice bath, then have to submerge your head and go under a piece of wood to get to the other side. And it's really goddamn cold. I mean, it's literally just like water with ice cubes floating around it. It was awful. But yeah, my face paint went after that, so that was kind of lame. But yeah, I had the horns. My sister made me these awesome horns. She actually makes horns for a living, which is kind of fortuitous. So sent me a pair of those. Yeah, very helpful. Black wig.
Makes horns for a living.
Yeah. So my sister is she kind of does what she wants for money.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's always the way to live, really. Both me and her are kind of similar in the way that I do this freelance kind of thing and she does her freelancing, but she's involved in the festival scene around the UK. In the UK, we have a huge festival scene. Over the summer, we just have like every weekend there's another festival going. I mean, there's at least like 2 or 3 every weekend now. It's such a big thing. And she does performance art, and she also does the headdress making, and now she's moving into I don't even remember what she's moving into now. She's always doing new stuff. So yeah, one thing she does is like makes and sells horns at these festivals. Gets a stall, and then tries to sell as much as possible.
So
So do you guys have like super progressive parents or something? Is he like just like doing this like
Yeah,
totally different?
my dad was like a total hippie. Like my dad was an absolute total hippie. And still kind of is. Settled down a little bit. He's less anarchy, more labor now. But yeah, no, that's for sure off him. And he was always very self-driven as well. He came to the UK, became a taxi driver, saved up enough money to buy a house, and then bought a house and started renting it out. Then from there moved to logistics, but at the same time was doing like the houses at the same time, kind of juggling the 2 jobs at once. And yeah, and he's always been like, oh, I don't want my children to work for the system. Fuck the system. I want them to do their own thing. I want them to have their own resources, have their own own their own methods of production, that kind of thing. And yeah, that kind of that one worked with both of us. And my mom's a nurse. I'd say she's kind of less an influence on my professional life, but bigger influence in my personal life because she's incredibly caring and nice person. Dad's Indian, my mum's Irish as well, so that's always a interesting mix of cultures there.
do you want to talk more about freelancing as a caster and whatever else you do? Like how is that going? How is that life?
It's an interesting life. Yeah. No, I mean, I love traveling, so that side of things is always really cool, trying to get as much land work as possible. And last year I went to Russia, Germany and China, so that was nice. But yeah, I mean, freelancing it's fun, and I juggle it with another job, so I don't have the pressure which a lot of other people feel, and kind of leads a lot of other people down these incredibly emotional paths where they're like, so dependent on it, and they need to make it work, and then you kind of feel like you're failing if you're not getting the jobs. But you do have to respect there's a lot of luck in there, and a lot of there's always something you don't know as well, especially being a freelancer, because you're not going to have anybody. You don't have a company behind you who's doing meetings and talking and communicating and words floating around. Any information you get has to be all through you alone. I mean, networking is something which I've always been pretty bad at. Honestly, that's for sure. Like, my biggest downfall is how bad I am at networking. I don't talk to anyone. And like I've got a story where obviously I won't name the person, but I reached out to a TO. This was like one of the first TOs I reached out to, tournament organizer, and said, hey, I'm Nomad, I've just started casting, and I've really, just looking to see who's hiring and who's interested. And he was like, I don't really appreciate being contacted, just because you want something from me. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't realize. Like, oh, shit. Oh, man, I feel like an asshole now. And then, like, a year, well, however long it was ago, like, so many months down the line, I look back on that and go, what an idiot. Why the hell would you're a tournament organizer? Of course, you're going to get people messaging you asking for things like that. But I mean, yeah, obviously, that's no longer a thing. It never was a thing, to be honest. I just got unlucky with who I messaged. And as far as I'm aware, that person doesn't work anymore. So
How did
Um,
you start working with us? Did we reach out to you first? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, well, I reached out to join Dota League.
Oh yeah, right.
And then no, it wasn't you, Charlie. Don't worry. I reached out to join Dota League, and then yeah, we just kind of grew from there. A glorious, beautiful relationship grew from there. Nomad X joined Dota.
I think
Definitely
Scant has opinions about freelancing.
Yeah, I mean it's it's funny what Nomad was saying about like what his dad's don't be part of the system or whatever, because freelancing in Dota is a bit like it's both sides. It's like you are doing this totally free, independent, your own thing, but you're also in a space where like you're very likely to be exploited by like if we talk about the system in the broader sense of like capitalism, like Dota's Dota's the scene of much exploitation. Like, and when you're small and you're freelancing, you get taken advantage of. I mean, it happens all the time. I'm sure you've experienced it.
Oh yeah.
And so that's that's the what you need to overcome, and it takes sort of you need the mental strength, you need I guess the financial stability and the backing of people around you to sort of drive through that and get to a point that's sustainable.
Yeah, that's true. No, the taking advantage thing, I think, is obviously very prominent across any kind of freelancing situation you look at, really. And it's really hard for people coming into casting, especially, to turn stuff down, because it's the opportunity, and the whole you do it for exposure thing is really tempting. And just getting your foot in the door, it's really hard and really tempting. And that obviously is something which a lot of companies see, and they go, oh, okay, we can definitely work off that. And they might not realize they're kind of doing, and then I'm sure they phrase it differently to each other when they say, like, we'll give these guys an opportunity, we'll give some fresh talent that go, with the underwritten subtext of these conversations is, we can save a shit ton of money if we do this, guys. So obviously that's always going to be a thing. But yeah, no, I definitely don't see it as much different from working for a company, because you're just working for lots of different companies. That's what being a freelancer is. You're not self-sustaining, making your own income from the consumer directly. You are still getting paid by companies. So freelancing is not at all anything like liberating in the economic sense. But it's definitely cool to work on your own terms, negotiate your own deals constantly. If you work really hard for a company and really well for a company for 2 years, you probably won't get a pay raise in that time. You won't get a promotion in that time, especially in my country right now. No one's getting promotions at all, because everyone's just going into full defensive mode. But if you're for freelancing, you just the improvement scale is so quick. You start doing better, and you're going to see increasing your payment very quickly as well. So I think that side is quite liberating. And just being in control of your own product and everything you produce is definitely extremely liberating. That's the part I probably love the most. Is just, you know, there's so much drive to get better, so much drive to just improve, and then that kind of reflects onto other aspects of your life as well. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Is it easy to do your taxes as a freelancer in the UK?
Yeah, interesting you should say that. That's actually a topic I was skillfully avoiding for a very long time and have finally been forced to.
He's from the
Not tax
tax
evasion,
office.
not tax evasion. Shit, they're coming now. Fuck, they're at the door. No, I've been.
I mean, a lot of freelancers all over the world just don't pay taxes, right? It's a very common thing.
Yeah, that's what I got told.
And I mean, and part of the reason is that they can get away with it, but part of the reason is also that it's a lot more difficult when you're doing it yourself. At least for me, I know it's much more of a headache, and I ended up just hiring someone to help me do it because.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing only because we're allowed to claim on expenses here. Also, I didn't know this, but there are so many things you're allowed to claim on tax expenses here. I'm allowed to claim 25 to 30% of my rent on tax expenses because I work from home. You know, like all this different stuff, and you know, I can basically, like really pump the expenses pretty hard. And of course, having an accountant helps you do that much easier as well because you can just kind of run through it. They know, you know, you got a question, you don't have to wait. You know, you ring up whatever Citizens Advice Bureau, and you'll probably be expecting you don't get to go on hold here. You give them your concern, they'll forward it through to the relevant parties, they'll get back to you. So if you have a question about your taxes, you're looking at about 2 weeks until someone's going to get back to you about it. So that's just not possible for anybody who's like an actual freelancer or anything like that. But you have an accountant, they already know that stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's nice. It is really easy. Charlie is correct.
You also have the other job as a landlord. Do you want to talk about that? Because what Scant said is that landlords are not loved.
Yeah, nobody likes their landlord. Nobody
Are you an
likes their
asshole?
landlord.
Are you an asshole?
Nobody likes me. Yeah, no, I'm a total asshole landlord. Yeah, no, I'm. It's good because you're either an asshole landlord or you're a shit landlord. That's basically like, and I'd say we're probably leaning more towards the shit landlord kind of side. But this is all like yeah. I mean, as I say, yeah, I don't make any. Yeah, I'm a very privileged person, but I think compared to a lot of other privileged people, especially in my country, I can kind of respect where I come from, recognize that, and you know, respect it. More knows. But my family, as I said, dad came to this country. He was a taxi driver. He didn't have anything. My mum was a nurse. You know, she came from like not a high income family in Northern Ireland. So they never really saw money until my dad really started like pushing hard on the properties and everything like that. And he's accumulated his property portfolio, which has now been passed on to me and I look after. So we've got about a total of 24 residential and commercial properties in England, mostly near where I used to live in High Wycombe, which is kind of like near London. I mean, firstly, that is just mad. Like, there's stuff. You know, my dad bought a property for like £30,000, his first property, in kind of what was then considered suburban London. It's now considered urban London because it's expanded so much, and that property's now worth about £400,000. So just crazy stuff like that. You know, properties are mad. It's just mental. But yeah, moving on to how
a question, because I don't know who linked it, but someone said that they want to make it so that you have to sell your property if you are just using it for financial reasons or what, something like that. If you just gain capital from it and nobody like lives there or anything. In the UK.
I don't. There are definitely rules when it comes to. Yeah, you have to offer it. There's a lot of weird rules in the UK. We have to offer a lot of things. For example, if they're also very protective about how giving property away for free. You're basically not allowed to do it ever. One thing is if my dad was to want to transfer the ownership of any of the properties over to me or my sister, then he would have to offer that to whoever's living there. He has to go and say, you know, yeah, you can buy this property if you want to as well. Here's the cost. Here's what I'm selling it to for, to my whoever the recipient is, in this case, me or my sister, do you want to buy it, basically? So it's just not it's stuff like that. So there's loads of safeguards in place for that kind of thing. And yeah, no, property has to be used for residential or commercial purposes. I'm fairly sure. I don't, or public. I don't think there's. I don't know the exact laws behind it. Obviously, we would never consider holding a property and not trying to rent it out or something like that. But yeah,
Right.
no, I'm fairly sure that is the case. But it's weirdly, obviously, like any job, there's definitely blurred lines crossing over. Landlording is a crazy job where you have to do so many different things. You have to know and do and understand so many different things, and everybody, this is the thing I hate about it the most, everybody wants to screw you, like everybody. Oh my god. No, I mean, look at me, I'm used to it. No, this is like a real problem where and especially I'm young, a tradesman, another landlord, tenants, they all just see you and they're like, I mean, tenants are definitely the best. They won't be like, they might ask once, oh, can I have cheaper rent? I'll be like, no. And they'll be like, well, I tried. See you later. Yeah, see ya. But no, like all the tradespeople, all the people who are in the business of landlording or anything to do with properties, they are just hell bent on screwing you. And then I kind of come over to esports and I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then people are actually passionate. People just want to do a good job for a good job. Obviously there is money involved. Success is kind of part of it, but people actually want to do, they just want to do things for the passion. They enjoy it. This is something they want to be part of, not just because it's going to make some decent cash. And it just drives me crazy. I mean, I have so many examples, and none of them are remotely entertaining. I mean, I think probably the easiest example I can give is we had a roof last time which needed fixing, and I took, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll get it sorted. So I get like 3 different companies out to come and review it. I get like wildly different quotes from each of them. I choose the one in the middle, which sounds like they can actually do a decent job. And then they completely mess up the roof. It's still leaking. There's cracked tiles all over the floor. The tenants complained because one of them nearly got hit by a tile. There's just so many different things going wrong, and they haven't fixed any of the problems they said they were going to fix. So I call them back out. I point at the roof and go, look, this isn't fixed. You said you would do this, this, and this. The main problem is that the timber had rotted at the top of the walls, which had caused the roof to sag, which had caused the tiles to sag and then get gaps in them, which was letting in water. And they hadn't fixed any. They just replaced our tiles, and they hadn't even replaced our tiles. Actually, they had covered up tiles in a paint, which had also ruined the tiles that happened. So I called him out on all this and just said, this is the quote you gave us. This is a legal quote from a tradesman you gave us. This is what you said you would do. You barely done anything on this list. What's the deal? And he's like, oh, okay. And then he leans into our house and starts with his phone and starts taking pictures. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, there's look at this picture. There's mud on the floor. Because there's mud on the floor, this means that the health services will come around and they're gonna kick your tenants out and make your house derelict. And the oven door was broken as well. We were getting that mended at some point in the future. And he was like, oh yeah, no, this oven door's broken. So and this guy was literally just going around taking pictures of my house, and I'm like, I told him to put the phone away, and he's like, no, and he's just going around just ignoring me, taking pictures through the window of my house. And then I'm like, and then he just says all this stuff like, I'm gonna send these pictures over to the council, get you reported, and then drives off and doesn't give me an answer. So I'm like, okay, that's £2,400 of roof fixing gone completely to waste, and the only way I can really do anything about it is to go to the council. And then he knows that because he's all these pictures, he's gonna message them before I ever do, and then just cause it to be like this hugely long legal process. That was a really ridiculous situation, and it's not uncommon at all. And it's just, yeah, it's soul destroying. It's like, why are humans this arseholeish? But it definitely makes me respect, the esports scene a lot more. And when you go to these events and feel like-minded people, you're just like, hell yes, I want to talk to everybody here. These people aren't just looking at me and thinking, damn, can I make some money from this dude? No, like they actually want to hear something interesting.
There's scammers in esports too. There's I hope you don't have to deal with too many of them during your career, but they exist.
You know that, don't you, Scants? Yeah.
I'm still owed like $7,000 by GESC, and like and the funny thing about GESC is that the guy who ran GESC, Oscar, was like definitely the nicest person who's ever employed me in esports.
Really?
And so it's like the person who owes me the most money was also the like as a human being the nicest, kindest, most generous, most considerate person. So I mean, there's all kinds of, there are people in esports who are shady and just want to scam you. And then there's also people who are well-meaning, but just get out way in over their heads and end up screwing you over accidentally. I mean, a lot of the esports ecosystem is just speculation. It's just people like start a venture or start a team on the basis that once they start it, they'll get investment. And then sometimes they don't get that investment, but they've already made the commitment to do that thing. And inevitably, then whatever consumers or whatever people they owe money to just don't get it. So I think that happens quite a lot in esports. But I do agree with you, like on a sort of like one-on-one individual, like interpersonal level. There is something about when you go to esports events that everyone's got that kind of passion. Like everyone's sort of excited about the thing that you're all there for, and so usually those interactions are positive. I just for me like that stuff is separate from the financial side. The financial side is still pretty precarious, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So what about Oscar like made him, you know, a nice person? You know, was just is there anything specifically you can kind of talk about him?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you. So the first time I met Oscar, I was still working for Mineski. I met him at a LAN when I was coaching Mineski, and he was already interested in getting into the space then. And we kind of became friends. He would check in on me all the time, even when I wasn't working for him. Like, you know, I've got mental health issues. He'd check in and ask me, like, you know, how's your depression? How are you doing this week? When he eventually offered me a job, so like outside of working as talent at his LANs, I actually consulted for him for about 6 months, and that all did get paid. And the consulting that I did for him, he actually negotiated me up, which that no one else in esports has ever done that for me. Like I pitched him a figure, and he said, "That's not enough. Let me give you more." Right? So like, that's the person who now owes people like millions of dollars. But like, the reason he owes people lots of money is because he got promises from investors who then fucked him over, and so in turn he ended up fucking us over. And like I still speak to him maybe once every 6 months, and he always says, "Yeah, I'm trying to get the money," but like I don't think anyone at this point believes that the money's gonna happen. But he is a very thoughtful, like genuine person who he wanted to create a successful. He was very passionate about. In fact, part of what he and I spoke about initially, why we became friends, he hated the fact that in Southeast Asia, esports is so like unstable and unreliable and shady. And so he was like, we're going to do this right. We're going to create like a legitimate Southeast Asia esports circuit that like can be trusted. And I'll tell you something, the people he hired were amazing. Like anyone who went to either the GESC events would tell you, the staff who ran the events were brilliant. They were above the level that you normally expect at an esports event, because these were people who he'd hired people who were working for Universal Studios, were working for the NBA, people with like real legitimate events credentials. And so it's really a shame that the money didn't end up working out, because that team of people would have done amazingly for esports. They would have done exactly what he was talking about. But yeah, it's sort of ironic, because I myself personally, like when I would talk to him, I'd just be like, well, I'm not a person who has that much business savvy. I don't know about the business side of this stuff. But it turns out he was kind of in over his head too. And this is a guy with an MBA, and he's got his own background. Like he's not just a random person. It's what I was describing before. What happens is you can't really attract the investment until you've created the product. So you have to create the product first, and then if the investors back out, it collapses. And that happens everywhere in esports. Like there's a lot of businesses in esports that are sort of ticking time bombs. Even when I was working for Entity, a similar thing kind of happened. You know, they gave us these long-term contracts, but actually didn't have the money for it, and so. And you can't create a Dota team like that. You can't create a Dota team that if they don't win something within the first 3 months, you're going to drop them. Like that's a ridiculous idea. But that's happening in a lot of places, and even some of the more in Dota, even some of the more established places, like there's a lot of the big Chinese teams that are financially struggling. I mean, what I had heard about PSG LGD was that LGD had to make a partnership with PSG because they were gonna be insolvent. And we consider them to be like the most reliable sort of, foundational Chinese Dota team. But like, had they not made that partnership, they were struggling financially. So I think that everyone in esports struggles to turn a profit. I think that's kind of the fact of the matter. And we're in this space where there's this game being played by all the big esports companies. What do they need to do to attract more and more investors? But they're not actually, like, as a matter of their business plan, making profits.
Yeah, so it's kind of more just a chase to get the investors, and then kind of struggling to really do anything with the money, even if they do get it, which oftentimes they even don't manage to do so. I think it's obviously a lot of the finger pointings at Valve at this kind of stage about or money in the tier 2 scene, money in the qualifiers, etc., etc. But they also are there ways for, I don't know, I'm obviously still new to all of this, but are there ways for teams to actually make money outside of tournaments, like branding deals? We see EG probably the best at that. They have their Life of a Genius series, they have their shirt sales and that kind of thing. Is that ever going to amount to nearly enough to start to tackle the iceberg of money which they're looking to be making on a regular basis?
I mean, I think that's why we see things like, Riot and Blizzard have really gone the sort of franchising direction, because, they have this belief that that's what's going to build up the branding opportunities. If you've got teams that are tied to cities, and if they've got their own sort of local venues, like if you look at football, for example, the fact that every team has their own stadium helps them a lot in terms of actually making money and sustaining themselves. The fact that you've got your own kit that people want to buy, that kind of stuff, I don't think anywhere in esports it's working that well, and I think particularly in Dota, it's very far behind, and that is a lot involved because of their sort of laissez-faire approach. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's obviously also benefits of their approach, but I'm of the mind that the costs certainly outweigh the benefits, generally speaking, and it's not just like I felt this way even before it personally affected me. Like, I do think that Valve should have settled the money that was owed to people for GESC because they sanctioned that event. But I don't feel like there's there's no recourse for any of us to take, and no one ever even dreamt of doing that. Like, personally, I think that Valve this is going to show you my political leanings a bit, but like, Valve are stinking rich. Their profits are really large, and people are constantly talking about taking a percentage of the TI prize pool and distributing it elsewhere to the tier 2 scene or whatever. They don't need to do that. It's not an either or. They could have exactly the same amount of money from the TI prize pool go to the tier 2 scene and just spend some of their own money, on their ecosystem. They can do that. And I don't I do feel that when sometimes people overcomplicate the problems that Dota has, like there's a level at which Valve just accepting that they should spend more money would make things better. And people talk about, what should we do in the tier 2 scene? What kind of events should we have? What should the rules be? Should there be a circuit? Should there be regular events? Should there be regional? I actually think that stuff's all secondary. The first step is for Valve to be like, you know what? We're going to spend an extra $10 million on the Dota ecosystem this year. And you know what? That's not going to make any difference to their bottom line. It really isn't. It's just that the philosophy of like a super like a super libertarian company, the philosophy of Gabe Newell would never permit for that to happen. I think what needs to happen is someone needs to demonstrate to Valve that like functioning as an effective sports federation would be good for them as a business. Because if you can't tell them that it would be good for them as a business, they just don't care. Now, personally, I think it would. I think those incentives do align at some stage. And it's easy to see that, half the people who play Dota think that Dota's got a few years left. I don't actually think that. I think Dota will survive. But if the game's not growing, if people are worried about the game dying, and you can just spend a little money to keep it going extra 10 years, like, that's going to be good for your long-term profits, right?
Yeah, Valve in long term is kind of been an oxymoron for a long time now. I think Dota is like the number one thing which they managed to keep on going and keep being successful. I mean, but you look towards Team Fortress 2, and that game is just an absolute, like, they've revived it somehow. But that game was obviously, they started doing these updates and everything where it was very short-sighted, and the community realized this, and the esports scene never took off with pretty. I mean, there is a small esports scene there, or there was a small esports scene there, but it never took off because of these kind of short-sightedness, and definitely focused around what was fun and what was going to be entertaining. Now, I think that was a lesson for them, which set up for Dota 2. Okay, Steam. I mean, obviously, Steam is more of a platform, obviously, but you look at what's come with Steam over the years, right? The Steam controller. Yeah, that's I've still got my Steam. Oh no, I don't. I never bought one because that kind of, the Steam to PC. Have we still got that big TV button in the corner? Oh no, that's gone. I wonder why that went. Maybe because it was another. These ideas, they have a lot of them. Valve seems to be great inventors. Long term, Dota 2, they've done an amazing job so far. Despite all our criticisms, they have done a very good job on keeping the game. We've just had the biggest prize pool again. Should the community show more trust in them, would you guys say?
KitKat, you want to take this one?
What I think Valve's problem is that they don't have event organizers, and they can't ever view stuff from that point of view. They're either like they have, I think, project managers and stuff, but it's mostly like creative people and game devs. So I just think they're missing something within the company itself, and they're also like trying to struggle through it. And for Dota, I think PGL does a lot, and for CS:GO as well. So it's sort of like they have some outreach, but it's still not enough, or they're like not maybe even listening to the tournament organizers. But we also don't know that. We have no idea who's talking with Valve, or if anybody is at all, or even consulting on this level.
Yeah, the secrecy is something which I found fascinating, actually, because it kind of draws comparisons to, like, in a lot of sci-fi books when you have someone traveling to a planet, and it's like a planet of kind of like, half, not a little bit under tech, under par creatures, and then it's a very common trope in the sci-fi where you have, like, this race who's like very kind of underdeveloped, and then like a super high developed citadel like structure in the middle of everything, which is like super secretive. No one knows what goes on over there. The people are happy to survive, live under in this thing, like deliver them food. They'll never be hungry, but they'll never have what they have in the citadel, and these people are kind of like above and beyond, and it's always very secretive. That's kind of how I view Valve. They like this big kind of monolith in the center of Dota, who we know so little about their internal workings, and even their external workings. I mean, patches are crazy.
You know what I mean?
But
most of the people, if you speak to talents like the tier 1 people, most of the people who've met Valve employees will say very positive things about them, because on like a personal level, they're like ordinary, nice human being. But there's a sort of company philosophy, like the picture you're painting is it's a strategic choice by the company, to position themselves that way. And it's because it makes them less accountable. It's because it makes it more scary for the people in the ecosystem. Everyone's terrified of unionizing because nobody wants to upset Valve, because there's no established precedent for what that looks like. And I was always
come out of the citadel and zap down on you, blowing you up.
Yeah. And I was always, my belief is, actually, when I write an article criticizing Valve, I'm doing free consulting for them. Like, they shouldn't be upset when someone criticizes them, because you're giving them advice and you're not even charging. And if you're going to believe that they're going to be upset by you taking some kind of action to criticize them, you're assuming that they're like got the maturity of a small child. So I think that they're not actually immature, but they sort of create this atmosphere on purpose, so that everyone's too afraid to take action, and things kind of just stay the same because that's in their interest, at least financially. But yeah, I mean, your question earlier, what KitKat was responding to, you saying, should we trust Valve more? Like, my feeling is that Valve are really, really good. They're a really good company at having cool ideas. I don't think they're a really good company at having responsible ideas. And so it's a bit like, I mean, this basically like their employees get free reign to just masturbate all day and like have a good time, you know?
I mean,
And
they're a typical Silicon Valley company. They just
exactly. But the problem is once you become like they're functionally an esports federation as well. You know, they're like the FIFA of Dota. You know, they're now what that means is that all their employees spend the whole day masturbating and they're having a great time, but actually they need to be raising a child at this stage. You know, like
Okay,
those are like
that analogy took a really long time to get to, and I was like, "You just sticking with this? Is this just like the term which he's just gonna keep on riding with?" Because, but no, now that you kind of reached the point there, I'm kind of no, continue. Sorry, that was,
so that's and Valve they've not even acknowledged that like they've got this child that they're raising, you know, and the child's there and it's sitting in the corner and it's crying and they're still just having a wank, and that's, you know, like there's pleasure to be derived from the process, you know. They're still creating some sort of utility, but it's not a responsible way to go about it, I think.
Okay, that is interesting. I mean, the thing which I always think about when people talk about Valve, specifically, is Too Good and his kind of that huge ass essay he wrote after huge ass, that after he got yeeted from the scene, and that's like I read that recently actually again. He talks about Valve a lot in there, and there's definitely obviously sour grapes in there, but I mean that does kind of more or less link up to what you were saying in the way that they're all very nice people, but they're all kind of using the people who they see as their this is just a business relationship. Nothing's really that personal, and this is all their kind of strategy. But obviously, it's impossible for me to actually form more of an opinion on that because this is all that I've read and seen from other people. But maybe that's changed. Bruno wasn't with them before Bruno was with them when Too Good actually got fired, wasn't he?
Yeah.
yes.
It was a very awkward time for their relationship. I was at that event.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, it's
the audio today makes it very awkward to try to kind of talk to each other. But yeah, I mean that's kind of like where I leave with Valve. I mean, I think they're the community don't trust them very much to kind of ensure the longevity of Dota 2. And in a way, I kind of think that's what Valve want, because they want the community to take responsibility of that longevity and keep it alive themselves. Which
What do you think of what PPD said, that the community should take charge? That Valve doesn't
that's
always
what
need
Valve
to do
want,
everything.
right? That's what Valve want PPD to say. Maybe he's been paid off by Valve. I don't know, but that's what he wants, right? He wants them to be like, go and take control, because that's the easy. Well, it's not the easy way; it's the best way for any kind of community to sustain itself. But you do run into problems when you're looking at investments, on the higher up scale, where you've got this whole ecosystem behind your game. And you've the investments and everything, sponsorships. You can't show any kind of volatile in this. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but you got to keep and make sure that security is there for people. And
I mean,
trusting the community only goes so far when it comes to that kind of thing.
Like, let me ask you, as a landlord, you'd probably love it if, you've got a tenant, something breaks, they fix it themselves. Isn't that wonderful? And that's it's the same, like Valve are Valve are thinking, it would be great if like all of these things that ordinarily a company has to pay people to do just got done by themselves. Like, we're saving money. But it's also like, I mean, that is the motivation behind it. It's just like they want to spend as little money as possible and make as much money as possible. It sounds crude, but that's all it really is. That's the philosophy behind their approach.
I'm not sure if I agree with that. Obviously, there are a company, they're a Silicon Valley company, so yeah, it's probably the case. But I like to believe that a lot of the people still working behind Dota are doing it for more than that. Ice Frog, Bruno, all these people who got in That's just the ones we know about. There's obviously going to be more people than that. I think, definitely there's going to be the accounting team and, the upper management, that kind of thing, who are always going to be saying no and putting in blockades and making sure that people don't, assume too much responsibility and go against what the upper management maybe want from their company, if there is an upper management. I don't know how Valve works. Maybe it's a communist utopia over there. Don't know. But that's the kind of wavelengths I'm not 100% sure on. Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't really
I think if we look at Artifact, it depends on how they are gonna take this project now, and if they're gonna
Is
revive
it
it or
coming
not.
back?
We don't know. They've promised an update, so if they maybe come through on that, I think that's actually gonna make Valve look better.
They also promised $1 million tournament in the first quarter of this year, and then just never mentioned it ever
Yeah.
again. So, like,
So I think Artifact in itself is like a good indicator of how Valve works and what some of their goals are.
Yeah, I never really gave too much thought for that $1 million tournament, but man, for the people that really committed to that game in order to, try and get on the ground floor, that's got to be awful for them to have spent so much time trying to get behind this game and then for the tournament just never materialized. That's
I think
yeah,
so.
I mean, people like Sans fan made quite a big commitment. I mean, Lumi pretty much like closed the door on Dota for, he was like, I'm gonna be a full-time Artifact caster, and now what is, I'm not sure what he's doing now. I don't think he's doing any kind of talent work now. Must be doing something.
Suns fan?
No, Luminous.
Oh, Luminous, right? Sorry.
So and there are plenty of like card game players I know from Hearthstone and Magic who kind of dropped everything for a few months for Artifact, and that went nowhere. Most of them playing Dota Underlords or Teamfight Tactics now, so we'll see if those go somewhere instead.
Yeah, why not just go, $1 million tournament for Artifact? We meant Dota Underlords. Sorry, typo, guys.
97 players 44 minutes ago.
I mean, I actually think like Artifact is an amazing game. I think it is like brilliantly designed, like complex in all the right ways, challenging, interesting, but I don't think it's well designed for large scale commercial consumption. Like I think a big problem with Artifacts is that it's too difficult to get good at. Like, and so people tried it out. Like my read is, mostly what people complained about was the amount of money it cost. But my read was more like, if I'm gonna spend this kind of money, I want to be able to win. And nobody. I was lucky enough to be in the beta, so I played for a long time without having to pay for it, and I could learn and get good at the game. But I can guarantee you, nobody who plays that game in the first week is winning more than like 20% of their games, and that's a shit feeling for any gamer.
But when you're targeting the Dota audience, this is something people are very used to. So I'm not entirely sure how much applies. I think the market system was definitely a really, really, really silly idea, because you just end up abusing your own balancing. You put so much pressure on yourself to balance a perfect system. I remember the first I loved the game, and then I never touched it again, and I never felt the urge to play it again, and that was the end of it for me. And I think that's pretty much the same story I've heard from most people. Once I was playing the game, for the 2-3 weeks I played it, I remember just being bored as hell, because I didn't want to spend £9 for an Axe card, but everybody I played against had Axe, who had ridiculous stats and was just really hard to beat. And I was like, yeah, I can probably come up with a deck which beats its Axe, but do I want to? Do I? No, I want to do my own fun stuff. I want to make a Lightning Zeus with, I can't even remember what I did now. It's been so long ago, but I wanted to have some fun. I wanted to make some fun decks, and you couldn't do that because I had to play everything around this stupid Axe card. Now I'm sure the balancing is something which comes over time, as it always does with all games. And there's no game which has been balanced on release. Even Smash Bros. Melee had a Meta Knight, but there was definitely a big problem there, and where you just they deliberately left these balance problems in the game to not to gain money, I don't think either. I think it was just to, be like, oh look, here's Axe, but this guy's not actually overpowered if you're good enough at the game, because you can learn how to work around it. It's kind of how, like, when you're playing Dota, you might feel like Pudge is completely overpowered because you can just solo kill you time and time again. But then, when you get to like 2K, you kind of learn that, oh wait, actually this Pudge here is not that great because we can just place down vision and see him, and then, whatever, it's not a big deal. And then you learn how to use the spells properly, and then 3K, and it's kind of like this developmental process. And then you get to Artifact. It's kind of like the same thing, but it doesn't work the same because it's not about playing better or anything like that. I know how to, I know the building blocks. I know the game theory to how I would beat this Axe card if I wanted. In this example, there were other problems as well, but say just the Axe card, I know how to beat it. If I wanted to beat it, I just pick this, and that. But I don't want to. I want to form my own deck. I want to play my own game. It just kind of stopped you doing that. So I think that was one of my biggest problems with it. And all I did was just play it against a couple of friends of mine, and that was that was fine. That was good. I played against my friends for a while, and then we all just got bored of it and started playing something else. So again, I don't actually know what the problem is with Artifact exactly. I mean, I think a lot of people can talk about it, but I mean, the money which went into that game on launch and everything, you'd have expected them to figure it out by now. But maybe I'll give it another shot soon.
But I mean, like in some way, you're saying you're making, like, you're disagreeing with me, but I think you're making a parallel point to me actually. What we're both saying is that the game was designed for pro level, for expert level players. It's they didn't think about the experience of the average user, which is something that I think Wizards of the Coast have done very well for a very long time with Magic. I'm a very long time Magic player, and one of the amazing things about Magic is that it's a game that appeals consistently to expert level and entry level players. And part of that's because they've just designed so many different game modes. There's like a lot of game modes that are almost exclusively for casual players, which are sort of the more fun modes. And Artifact, I don't think it really presented that way. It was like you get good really fast and then play at a competitive level. Otherwise, what's this game really doing for you?
Yeah.
I never actually got into Artifact. I never bought it. I've not even played one game of it. And I think the actually having to buy the game is a big barrier if you have MTG Arena and if you have Hearthstone as competitors.
Yeah, those games were really huge and really fun. I mean, I loved Hearthstone back in the day. I just couldn't keep up with the constant pay gating, which Hearthstone churned out. It just constant expansions and then introducing wild mode, and that's exactly when I started when they introduced wild mode and standard mode, and I was just like, bye.
I've actually started playing it again. I really like the solo adventure stuff because there's unlimited turn time and I can just have it open in the background and then every now and then just do a couple of moves.
Yeah, I actually got really good at Hearthstone relatively quickly. I didn't play it for long. I played it for maybe like a year, but I started playing aggro shaman like long before anybody else did, and I managed to get like I think within the top 5 ranks, which for someone who's been playing under a year is kind of pretty good. I don't know, maybe if I stuck by it, I could have gotten even higher, but I mean, yeah, that's because no one had discovered aggro shaman yet, and I was just like, I only played shaman, and I was like, hey, look, this guy's got loads of damaging spells, and I really like the what's the mechanic which allows you to attack twice? Wind something.
Wind Fury.
Wind Fury, that's it. I love that mechanic, and I just played around that all the time, like putting down the Reavers, putting down the battle axes, stuff like that, the totems, the damage totems, and just trying to get like 1-2, like bring people down from like full health to nothing, OTKOs. That was a dream right there. That's what I like doing, so, and it was pretty successful. I enjoyed that game a lot.
I
liked Hearthstone a lot as well. I mean, it's sorry, I think my internet's lagging a bit. I played Hearthstone for a long time. I mean, I made it to legend like 20 or 30 times, but it's like I'm quite competitive when I play any game, and it's a time investment. And sort of the older I got, the more I felt like whichever game I'm spending my time on needs to also be part of some kind of income, some kind of like profession, some kind of And then it became a decision point at some stage. I can prioritize Dota and Magic, and I can find ways to make them sort of relevant to my career and justify playing them that much. But Hearthstone I was never really interested in like writing articles about Hearthstone or commentating Hearthstone or anything like that. And so it ended up naturally just sort of dying as my third game. Yeah, I don't know. I think that if you have to pick one card game, it's just if you're a person like me who's sort of strategy obsessed, like Magic is just the deepest card game. It always has been, and it probably always will be. And in some way, I almost feel like maybe that's why Valve did what they did with the Artifact. They felt like we got to compete with Magic, so it's just got to be like incredibly deep and complex game. And maybe they missed the fact that actually Magic does that, but it also caters for all the casual players. It does both those things.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's just a fundamental difference, really, isn't it? And yeah, the axe problem, as I have now named it and more fondly call it, until I think I might give it a go when it comes back. I don't know if it comes back. Sorry, if it
I
comes.
mean,
It might have
I
just
would
been...
definitely want to try it if they do manage to do something with it. But the two lead developers or whatever have already left Valve, so who's
Yeah.
gonna take over? who's
Well, that's the thing. They
gonna
had
have the
the
expertise?
Richard Garfield, right, the
Yeah.
creator of Magic, working on the game. So yeah, even his input couldn't make it really work. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, they had what's his name, Broad as well from the Hearthstone team as well. So maybe there's some. They just need some fresh blood, some new eyes on it, other than changing how they monetize the game.
maybe.
Nomad, have you actually ever cast anything else than Dota?
I observed a League game once. Yeah, I have no idea. I never played League, but some guy messaged me, a friend of mine messaged me being like, "Hey, dude." See, back in my Peanut Almighty days, this was the real OG Nomad times. Guy messaged me being like, "Hey, man, look, I'm really in a bind. I'll pay you like 20 quid." And I'd never been paid for anything, but at this point, so I was like, "Holy shit, 20 quid. Holy Jesus, it's gold." And so just like observe this League game, and I was like, "Oh, great." And then it was all good until I didn't like in League, the ancients never explode or anything like that. People just leave. And then that's it. And everyone left, and he didn't tell me to stop. And I was like, okay. And I kept messaging, being like, can I stop now? And I was kind of just floating around the map, looking at weird things. And I could hear the casters as well. They were still going in game. And they weren't speaking English either. It was an Egyptian tournament. I think that's pretty important as well. So yeah, it was an Egyptian tournament. I had no idea what they were saying. I was observing a game I never played before. It was really a bizarre experience. But yeah, that was the time I think it was called Gamers Lounge, League of Legends Gamers Lounge. Borno, thanks for that wild trip. I spent about an hour casting game, which lasted about 20 minutes. Yeah, that was weird. But other than that, no, I don't think I've actually properly casted another game. Actually,
But if
people
you
keep
could,
asking me that as well.
if you could, would you?
Good.
Like what?
Oh
What
boy,
else
this
do
is
you
someone
have?
who's messaged you being like, all right, yeah, I'm starting this new tournament in this game. Let's see if Nomad's interested, but he's got to get the answer right. Fuck. Then I'll look through them all. What's up and coming? It's really hard. I mean, I enjoyed Overwatch for a time, but I really kind of dislike the system which Blizzard have in place and everything, and I don't think it's got much legacy, the esports scene there. I just feel so forced. Yeah, I don't think I do Overwatch just purely on that principle alone. CS:GO, I played a little. I mean, I played a shit ton of CS Source, but Counter Strike Go, I played a little bit, about 200 hours in. Again, I don't think I'd ever cast it just because I'm just not that interested in the game. It's really hard for me to actually say I would want to cast this, because yeah, I just don't really play any game as much as I play Dota. I think my next most played game is like 400 hours versus now nearly 7,000 hours in Dota. So
Did you ever get into World of Warcraft?
I see. No, I never got into World of Warcraft. Didn't get into World of Warcraft for the relaunch either. I was always so I actually had this friend in school, who a very good friend of mine in school. Like we had like this group of like three of us at one stage, and we were like best buddies. And then he kind of stopped showering and stopped kind of existing outside of school hours. And then he would just kind of take days off school every now and again, and he kind of became extremely pale, and he just disappeared basically on every wavelength except the physical one. And he just got into WoW, and it completely took over his life. And he was like, yeah, and he had a girlfriend as well, and I mean, she broke up with him, but she was saying like, yeah, I used to go over and I would just like, sit with him whilst he played World of Warcraft, and his idea of getting into it would be like, her doing stuff under the desk whilst she was playing World of Warcraft. It was really fucking weird. So that's scarred me and stopped me from going anywhere near that game ever. Which is probably a complete overreaction. It's I now know, especially from Dota 2, that people who say that a game is addicting are just really, really bad at managing their time. So
I mean, it's also
yeah,
an escape for a lot of people. Like,
yeah, that as well. You can tend to over rely on things and turn it into that psychological aspect of it as well. But yeah, I mean, there's people that overreact on everything, but when someone gets super into the gym and they end up going for like every waking moment of their life and they get super swole, etc., no one really comments on it. They're just like, oh yeah, they're a gym buff. That stuff is unhealthy as hell. Like those gym cultures are toxic places. Like that's a horrible thing to get into. I know enough about that scene now to be like, fuck no. Like that's not good. It's not healthy on a mental, physical. It's not even that good for you. You're probably like ruining your ligaments and joints and shit. And you need to balance it out with other stuff. And then like there's so much bad stuff behind it. Everything can mess you up. And I think people kind of they just choose to hate on video games, mainstream media and that sort of thing. Like video games, like, oh, it's new, it's different, we never did it, therefore spending too much time on it is bad. Well, yeah, but spending too much time, is that every evening? It's okay. If it's all day every day, it's bad. It's not rocket science, really.
yeah, I guess everything in moderation.
Yeah, it's a term I hate, but it definitely does apply to a life.
All right. Do we have any more topics? I guess we didn't talk too much about the exercise stuff. Do you have
Exercise
anything
and
to say?
Dota. Yeah. No, this was one I actually quite wanted to talk about because I know a lot of people who don't exercise and play a lot of Dota and that kind of thing, and like just play games. It doesn't really matter the game. Exercise just does so much for like. And I'm not going to tell you it's going to stop you raging at Dota. You're still going to rage at Dota. You absolutely will. You get too absorbed in the game. That's half the fun of it. You get completely over emotional. You go completely overcommitted. You lose the game. You throw your keyboard. Punch a wall. But then after, I kind of think it's a thing afterwards where it's like, are you going to brood about it for ages? You're going to be like, oh man, that goddamn game, like kind of, there's dumbass teammates until you go to sleep. Nah, like if you get enough exercise, I honestly think it helps you just clear your head so much quicker. You got more to think about, but it just kind of changes you cognitively. And honestly, like I think as well, not just exercise as a blanket term, but exercise in the forms of, for example, rock climbing. I think is a fantastic example. I think if anybody doesn't exercise and they play a lot of Dota or a lot of video games, go rock climbing. You will love it. I know Scriff does it. I know a bunch of players do it. I know that there's like tons of people that do it in the Dota. Well, not tons, but there's some Dota people, which considering how niche rock climbing is kind of weird. Everybody I put onto it has been like, this is awesome. And they kind of go into it because it's like a lot of problem solving and excitement and also a bit of impulse as well. There's points where you need to just trust your instincts and go for something. But it's a lot of figuring things out, which is what you look for in when you play a game of Dota. I think the reason a lot of people play games and then try to, play, go to the gym. Incredibly monotonous, boring as hell. A lot of people give up on it, and that's something I completely sympathize with. If you don't
Yes.
have a goal, going to the gym is just like dry. It's really dry. I think if you have a goal, it's different, but if you don't, then it's incredibly dry. If you try and, how do you get into football? How do you get into basketball? If you spend all your time playing games, you probably don't know that many people who do that sort of thing, which is totally fine. How do you get into that? You probably can't. So that's like another barrier in and of itself. So, yeah, you could join like a team or anything, but I mean, we're not all that extroverted where you just want to turn up on your own to like your local five-a-side club and be like, hey, everybody, let's play some football. Nah, man, like that. You got to keep it realistic. Rock climbing, though, you can go on your own. Everyone's super friendly. At least in the English gyms I've been to, everyone's super friendly. It engages that problem-solving side of your brain, which which going to the gym will never ever be able to engage. And I think that's really important. It's exciting. It is fun. And you then gain the motivation to because it's entirely like about your body weight to muscle ratio. And I think that is something which you can really work on. It's like obvious goals. It's like, well, if I lose a couple of stone, then I'm going to be better at rock. I'll be able to do this harder rock climb. It absolutely does that. I took a week off. I go back. Yesterday was my first rock climbing session in a few weeks. After a week of just binging food, I go back and I'm like, oh, I actually can't do this climb, which I was able to do 2 weeks ago. That's crazy. Only a week of just like binging food and putting on weight, but that's enough to make me be unable, that extra bit of weight. So I think it's just really like a palpable thing. It's very physical and it's very like obvious for you to be able to just tackle it and that is what engages gamers and Dota players and all kinds of gamers, because it just gives you a target and it's exciting and it's fun. It's just something you can just engage your brain in, which is what we want from any activity. And I think dopamine comes into it in a big way as well. When you're playing games, you get constant dopamine hits. I killed someone. Shit, yeah, feels good, man. We won the game, dopamine, blah, blah, blah. All these little things, they just fire off these receptors in your brain. And same with going to the gym, it's not going to trigger that stuff off for you. And when you're really tired, the moment you drop a really heavy weight, for example, yeah, you get it a little bit, not really the same. You go climbing, you're just climbing up the wall, bam, climb's done, you touch that last hole, feels good, man. You're just getting the same kind, your brain is getting what it wants, so it's not bored. You're not thinking back to like, I could be grinding MMR, that kind of thing. So I think that's really important as well.
Just getting yourself out of the grind, I guess, of the games. I think it's super important for anyone who wants to become a professional gamer as well, because they need to look after their body, and if you look after your body, you also look after your mind.
Yeah. One thing I am getting way worse at Dota though is hopefully I'm going to get better now, but yeah, I mean when I was doing other stuff, when I was trying to lose my weight, and I'm also just moved house as well, and when I was exercising loads and rock climbing a bunch, then I just didn't have the time to play Dota. I got really bad at it, and a lot of people like to say like, oh, when you exercise more, you get better. No, you don't. Like the only way to get better is by playing a lot, like I think, but thinking about what you do. But I guess it does kind of help in the critical thinking side of things. If you're able to take a step back and rather than go, how do I win, but really what do I have to do in order to win, the overarching scheme of things, and just being able to like improve yourself. Exercise kind of helps with that, but I think it's a little bit too on the head. It's a little bit too basic compared to Dota, for example. If you come up to if you want to lift higher, then you just need to lift more. Your technique can make a bit of a difference, but you probably just need to lift more. Maybe gain a bit more muscle, drink some protein shakes. It's real straightforward. You want to get better at Dota? Well, got to look at the laning phase. Got to look at how your mid game choices are going. Are you targeting the right person in team fights? What about throwing out that stun? Are you building the right items? Are you going for the right skill builds? Are you changing up your skill builds enough? There's so many different things you can get into, which it just doesn't really. There's not much in real life which can actually challenge that same level of critical thinking. I think in the professional world, there's a little bit more when you're looking at your career and whatever you're in. I'm not just talking about casting, but casting is a really easy example where I'm like, well, this guy's telling me I'm shit on Twitch chat. Why is he saying that? He probably doesn't know what he's talking about. But if he's having a negative experience, then it probably arrives from somewhere else. Therefore, you've got to kind of try and work backwards and backtrack where that's coming from. If there's something else, whatever. There's always ways to improve, which you have to look really, really hard for, and you have to do that in a talent-based industry because it's so damn competitive.
Is it?
Is it? Is
do,
the
do you
casting
do you,
industry?
do you have a lot of competition? Do you think you have a lot of competition?
Less now than when I started for sure. Like there is less now, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of not even competition anymore, isn't it? It's just like the people who are already there, they're not going anywhere. But there's something I knew coming into everything was like the gaps, which there's no gaps to fill really. So yeah, I'd say there is competition because you're constantly trying, and even amongst the online games and stuff, you have to make sure you're keeping it hot for everything you do. I think there is competition though. I do. Yeah. Do you think there's competition?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
for me it's different because I'm the one picking and choosing. So, I mean, actually, sometimes there's even problems finding talents, or talents turn down some gigs and stuff. So, I think as far as talents go, and as far as talent competition goes, it's somewhat healthy. But I think the biggest problem is that the big tournament organizers always go with the big names for anything. I mean, I understand them. They want the reach of the talents.
Of course, and like what Scans was saying, there's enough risks in Dota and esports already, without then risking, are people going to be tuning out because we didn't choose their favorite caster? Are people going to be bailing on us because of that? Are people going to be jumping ship? Tons of other things as well. Too many factors to worry about, where therefore you have to just cut any kind of risk. Yeah. One thing, I messaged Mo Farah as a joke about one thing when I was saying, God damn it, why doesn't OD Capitalist and Toby ask, just ask for more money? Why don't they just ask for like thousands of pounds a day? And then they just open up more jobs. Like, do you think they are at? I genuinely got me thinking though, like just in a purely, obviously I don't want people to start pricing out for whatever reason. But do you think people charge enough? Like the top Dota talents charge enough to keep them getting new jobs?
Some of them charge
Really hard
enough,
one.
and there's actually some of the top talents, because they have been hired, other people haven't been hired, or even a talent slot has been removed, so the tournament organizer can hire them. But
I
on the
see.
other
Yeah.
hand, the tournament organizers are, some of them aren't putting enough budget into talent, so it's a really uneven ground right now.
That's interesting. So they actually want to hold on to these top talents so badly that they'll just like throw out other slots in order to make sure they get them. Wow.
Yep.
I mean, there's a very large portion of the viewer base who watch tournaments just as much for talents as they do for the actual games, which is sort of a weird dynamic we have in Dota. But I think particularly in Dota, maybe even more than other esports, because the game itself is so complicated, like it's quite difficult. The experience depends quite a lot on the commentary, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, especially when you're looking at the complexity of the game as well. That is something which needs to be condensed. It's very difficult, and I've experienced this myself. It's too difficult to want to watch a game whilst you're casually, enjoyably, without a commentator. Because if you don't have that commentator, then you have to be watching and you have to going, right, who's got this, who's got what item, what's building towards that. I think that the same can't be said for CSGO. When I watched CSGO competitively for a while, I actually watched it muted. Not because I enjoyed the casting and everything like that, but I was just kind of like, focusing on who's shooting who, and that's about it. It's definitely not as important for CSGO than it is. But there is a lot of complexity in CSGO as well. I mean, it's really unfair to say that it's a less complicated. There's less in it, but it is just a complicated game when it comes down to the strategy and the tactics and everything like that. But when you're watching it, you can just enjoy it without anybody shouting at you. You can just click on and watch people shoot each other. It's fun. It's fine. You know, you can do that. You can't do that in Dota. Well, like maybe you can if you just kind of skip past the laning phase, get towards the team fights, sit back and watch people beat each other up.
I mean, what biggest differences between most of the professional sports and professional esports is that basically every professional sport is centered around a single ball, and then the camera just kind of follows where the ball is, and that's the action, right? And I think that within esports, there's sort of layers of this. So the reason I think CS is easier to watch is because there is a bit of an element of that. There's a bit of an element of like there's a one main place the game's happening at any point in time. Whereas in Dota, it's never like that. In Dota, most of the game is you have to know what's happening in lots of places all at once, and so the commentary's kind of got to interweave different parts of the game together non-stop all the time. And I think that's really the challenge of Dota, and that's why it makes such a big difference for commentators to be entertaining. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the number one most sought of after quality in a Dota cast is entertainment. That's what brings the viewers.
Yeah, I also think there's a large degree of the kind of bubble, and no, I don't think it's as toxic as people believe. It's not really toxic at all, to be honest. But I think you have to prove to everybody else, you know, to the viewers that you're in this bubble, you know, and it's a very easy way for somebody to feel comfortable with somebody if the people you're with are comfortable. So I think again, you know, networking becomes so important now again, when if you turn up to an event and you're working with all these other talents and the talents aren't comfortable around you, that's obvious to everybody else. But more than that, it's obvious to the viewer, and the viewer will be able to tell me, well, if you're confident with the talents, then with the other talents, then the viewer will realize that, you know, I'm talking about the tier 1 guys. And they'll see you as part of that bubble, and they're much less likely to kind of, you know, hate on you and not accept you. I think that's where Lizard comes into his own. Lizard is just he literally, I walk behind him just in order to kind of absorb some of the confidence which is coming off his body. That's the kind of natural.
Just in like a draft.
Yeah, see if I can run in behind him, just being like kind of open my, just capture it inside me, breathe it in a little bit, and then, you know, he turns around and goes, "What the fuck you doing, man?" I'm like, nothing. Please help me. Okay, and then he kisses me. But that's the kind of thing, you know, which was what you need to bring to an event in order, and then people see, you know, you might not feel that if you're watching, right? You might not be watching Amir and being like, "Man, this guy's pretty good." You probably should be, but it might not click with you. You might not be that kind of tuned into people's charisma, maybe English something like that. I don't know, but social situations might not be. You might just not be that tuned in. But if everybody else is acting that way around him as well, you will be. Meanwhile, you look towards maybe me at Epicenter the first time. No one, you know, people weren't even saying our names half the time. They didn't know who we were. We didn't make it, and that's our bad. We didn't know how to go up to people and say hi. My name's Nomad. I'm doing this. You know, we sat at different tables during lunch, for God's sakes. It was ridiculous. You know, and that's just mad. And that's definitely like where the huge difference comes in.
There's an element to which you can be strategic in your networking. I mean, because I'm someone who's always hated doing networking. I've been very bad at it, and actually, I mean, the general Dota public's never been very favorable towards me, and in fact, a lot of the tier 1 talents don't like me either. But at the time when I was doing talent work, you know, the first LAN I got because Winter recommended me as a replacement for himself. And then I went to the Shanghai Major and I was working as a stats person. And Merlini thought my analysis was good, so he wanted to take a day off. And he's like, "Why don't you put this guy on the panel?" So it's kind of like, you know, if the right person at the right time likes what you're doing, that can make a very big difference. It doesn't have to always be like everyone loves you or the whole community loves you. Like there is a sense in which you can be strategic about who you get to like you. But definitely, if nobody likes you, you're not going anywhere. That's for sure.
Yeah. Luckily, there's not that many examples of that. At least, I don't know. Are there examples of that? Can you guys spill the beans on who just got absolutely yeeted from the scene?
There's Llama casts.
Lama Down Under. I mean, but she wasn't like exclusively hated. There were people who liked her too.
Yeah.
Like she left because she was harassed.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's something that's a discussion that hasn't happened publicly in our scene and needs to happen still one day. But uh, honestly, there's gatekeeping when it comes to that, because there were some very high up people in the scene who were defending her harasser. So yeah, I this is I mean, talking about this kind of stuff is what made me unpopular with the tier one talents in the first place. So I'm sort of thankful these days that I don't work as it's a big part of why I moved away from doing talent work, because of, as Nomad's saying, a lot of it is networking. But for me, just by being myself, that had sort of like a negative networking effect. And so it's like I moved towards coaching, because then it would be like people would hire me based on the quality of my work, and that's that. Like no one cares who likes me if as a coach. And now I'm sort of like the direction I'm going now with my work, which is sort of analytics, is even further that way. Just like purely objective quality of your work. Because it allows me to be myself publicly. It allows me to be myself on Twitter. It allows me to represent my own views in the industry, which is, I'm just like a extremely, I'm like an extremely opinionated person with like very strong convictions, with very strong beliefs in what's right and what's wrong, and it matters to me a lot, whatever I'm doing, to stand up for those things. And
Yeah, that is interesting points. So I've always found it fascinating to think about previously in social situations before I started ever doing casting. I was always cognizant of when you're in a social situation, how much are you presenting someone who you're pretending to be, and how much are you being yourself, and whether that is actually a difference, or whether who you're pretending to be is actually yourself but just select bits, or there's not actually any difference. And then with casting, obviously, that becomes a whole different thing of, am I putting on a persona when I cast, or is this all just me, who I am, kind of funneled in and just kind of doing my job, but also, being in maybe filtering a bit of what I would normally say. And I think, again, confidence comes in two forms. I think there's people who are confident because they have built up this persona, which they're extremely confident in, and they can put up the moment, the spotlight gets turned on them, and they can immediately just kind of fall back on that. And they're very, very confident that this persona they've built is bulletproof, that they can go through anything. It's strong, and it can hold up to any kind of harassment or anything like that, because it's not you they're harassing, it's someone else, it's this persona. And then there's people who are confident because it's themselves, because they are just very confident in who they are, they've worked through their problems, and they're just kind of presenting themselves. And that is absolutely something which I've now feel like I kind of get an idea on from that kind of theory. And I definitely started out on one side, and that just wasn't working for me. And I was like, why isn't this working for me? I was like, well, it's because, Nomad was a separate person to me at one stage. Nomad was just like kind of this person put up to cast, and this thing that I would create to kind of cast. And then, like, when people would say, Nomad, your shit, I'd be like, oh yeah, oh well, I'm gonna go home and eat my burger. Now it's I've tried, and I think that's a big part of. I started doing improv classes, and that just generally doing more stuff where I go out and meet new people. I've made friends just through talking to people, and just being like, "Hey, man, give me a number,
Tinder
we'll
dates.
do whatever." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Tinder, but for friends. If only that was a thing.
No, it is, well, it is kind of a thing. I meet a lot of friends on Tinder. I'm like a Tinder veteran at this stage in my life.
That because you just keep on getting chain friend zoned, or I mean,
No, not even. I mean, especially when I've worked in other countries, Tinder's like one of the most efficient ways to meet new people. And then it's like sometimes it's explicitly, I'll tell people before I meet them, we're gonna meet up and we're gonna see if there's chemistry. And if there is, maybe it'll be romantic. But if there isn't, we'll just be friends. And I've made a hell of a lot of good friends actually from Tinder. So I think it's not been a very successful app for me in terms of romance, but it's been really good at making me friends. So that's cool.
Yeah, I actually have the same experience with Tinder. It's more finding people to talk with, just finding random people rather than something more.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you work in esports, there's sometimes it can be quite an isolating field to work in. I mean, maybe even more so for me than for you guys, because I'm in a country where nobody else works in the industry. But it's like, conventionally, people who work full time meet people through their work. And if you can't meet people through your work, well, what are you going to do? You got to keep your life interesting, meet new people. I'm very in favor of dating apps for all kinds of purposes. I don't think they have a great conversion rate for like finding your soulmates, but whatever. What does that even mean?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And for me as well, one of my jobs is landlording, and one of my jobs is, casting. So where in that do I ever get to, I already talked about the kind of people who are in landlording. Assholes, all of them. I don't remotely like anybody I've met through landlording except
Wait, but
for
are
my
there like
family,
are
obviously.
there like WhatsApp groups for landlords where they like
No.
discuss their plans?
God no. There's nothing. There's no social aspect whatsoever. So I'm like stuck in two jobs where obviously I've got my whole online community, and I love talking to people. I love it when I can just jump on Discord and be like, who do I want to chat to right now? Boop. I don't do it very often, but I like having that there, and I love it when people message me up out of the blue, being like, "Hey man, how's it going?" That's awesome, and I love going to events and talking to all these cool people, etc. But when in between that time, which unfortunately is most of the time, it's kind of like it got to a stage where it was like, I don't really have many people outside my computer, but I actively kind of push to try and change that. And I say that, I mean, I literally just kind of got my online friends who live in the local area and be like, let's go outside more. And that's kind of what we ended up doing. But we added to that group, and now, there's like a bit of group. And I've just moved to Birmingham, which is about an hour and a half away from where I was before. So kind of looking at starting that whole thing again and trying to find new friends in a new city where I literally don't know anyone except for my girlfriend who I've moved in with. It's daunting as hell, but I mean, we're getting the house sorted out first. As you can see probably behind me, it's not exactly a home just yet, but we're getting there. We just got a sofa delivered today, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I've tried to go out more, just to go to random events in the city, just see the city, see the people, maybe talk with some of them. I think it's a really healthy thing to do. Like it's not good to be at the PC all the time. I mean, even if you go out for a walk, just go to the corner shop or something.
Guys, how good is this? Tomorrow I'm going for a trail run on Table Mountain because I live in Cape Town, so I get to just run on the mountain. Wonderful. And then after that, I've got a date in the evening. What a balanced life. How brilliant is that?
Perfect.
That's not the esports life I've heard of.
It might be a sweaty date, but that's,
I mean, yeah, okay.
Secret those hormones, bro. Get it.
Right. I guess we can start wrapping it up. Nomad wanted to talk about himself. That's what he told me. Like what's coming up for you? What are your plans? What are you planning to do?
Honestly, I feel like kind of been. The thing is, I can't really talk about what's coming up, can I? Because it's all under lock and key on all sorts of. But yeah, no, there's a lot of fun stuff coming up around the corner for me, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of getting to the stage now where I can kind of start experimenting a little bit more with what I'm going to be doing in the space. People trust me, and people who employ me, and now I've got experience now, so you can kind of start to look at doing a little bit more and pushing the envelope on that kind of things, which I think is again super important because yeah, you can do what everyone else is doing, which I think you should probably start off trying to do. Just get good, then get different is kind of a good mentality, I think. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think now that this season's coming around, it's kind of the point where I can start pushing and doing different things, and hopefully getting a bit more of a brand, not just filling in the jigsaw piece, but making my own jigsaw. Damn.
Yeah.
So that should be fun. One thing I can talk about is that there is nothing behind me right now, but in the future, I bought two lovely green Victorian era wing-backed chairs, which look fantastic. I'm gonna get those bad boys, set them up right over here. I'm gonna get us like a nice painting. I'm trying to find the most awful one I can. So far, there's like this weird little Victorian kid sitting in the charity shop next to me, which I'm pretty sold on.
Find yourself an artist. Find a regular, I don't know, painting of a forest, and find yourself an artist who will add stuff to it. That's the way to go.
That does sound like a good idea. Yeah, I might have to have a little search. Yeah, no, I'm going to be doing a podcast with Mo from here, but like, I think there's too many current event podcasts going on right now, so we're kind of trying to focus on just like probably still keeping it Dota stuff, but just not current event. Just pick a topic every week and just talk around it and have some whiskey and just do face to face kind of thing. Because face to face is very fun. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. What's the year going to be like for you, Kit Kat?
Actually, I'm trying to take part of Inktober, and I need to. It started today, so I still need to do stuff for that. Then also the novel writing month is in November, so I have 2 back-to-back months where I'm doing creative stuff, I hope. Then we have the Hamburg coming up. Then I guess a bunch of more of this podcast stuff. A few episodes at least. I hope it stays alive because I think it's a fun format, and this is like the only way I can talk with Scant. This is the only way I can sit him down.
You need an extra person here to like moderate your conversations or something?
No, it's more like we rarely talk, even though we enjoy talking with each other. So
we used to play Dota together, and then we kind of both stopped playing. So we just lost the pretext for conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Christ, I'm just a catalyst for you two to chat. Nice. Cool.
But I wanted to ask you, Nomad, do you have like a specific focus or like specialization that you deliberately go for in your casting? I think that, like, for example, like, are you trying to cast mostly one particular region or follow like certain teams? Because I think that it's a mistake that a lot of casters make, is not to do that. I think it really will help you to have like you're especially knowledgeable about this scene and these 3 teams, because then you like bring something more than other people when it comes to that. I think most people kind of default to just, especially if you're new, you like when you're a rising caster, you're just going to take all the work you get. So you're going to end up casting like every region and spread yourself really thin, but then you don't have any special insights into anything, and that doesn't help you to stand out. Like, I think Gareth and I, for example, like, we really it helped us so much that at the time that we were casting Southeast Asia, no one else was. And so it's also why we both have this affinity for TNC, because we were watching this team develop out of nothing to what they are now, which is like a massive fixture of the professional scene. And I think that if you do that, if you're like the main guy casting tier 2 EU teams or whatever, like, you're going to be the guy talking about the next big thing before anyone else. And that's something that people will remember you for.
Yeah. So I obviously, I have a very good knowledge of the tier 2 EU and CIS scene. I've been doing a little bit of China, but I don't know enough about China to be competent at all in that region. I think it's... No, I was going to say something, but I'm definitely not going to say that anymore. I think like Moxie's kind of obviously a fantastic example of this kind of thing, because she came into it and they were like, oh, this is a new caster. When she was new, everyone's like, oh, she's a new caster. We'll just give her early SA games. She just owned it. She's like, oh, cool. Give me the SA games. This is my region now. And she just kind of owned it and played up to it. And that was fantastic. I think there's others out there who kind of try to claim regions, but it almost feels disingenuous, because, it just feels like a career move sometimes when someone's like, oh, I love this region. And they'll just, it's a little bit forced almost. So I think it's very hard to do that if you're not kind of feel the natural attraction to that region. But obviously, Europe is my region. That's where I'm based, and that's where I've casted like 90% of my games. So yeah, that's definitely something. As you know, getting into the statistics and the analytics and stuff is something I'm actually looking to get into more of now. Even though I don't consider myself to be an analytical caster by any stretch of the imagination, I rely on who I'm casting with a lot on that side of things. But I think there's still an untapped kind of area of statistics and analysis, which I think a lot of play-by-players don't really utilize as well as they should. That's something I'm gonna try. There's probably a reason for it. I'm probably gonna discover the reason as I go, but it's all part of the kind of learning procedure. But I mean, yeah, as you mentioned it, I think it would be a good idea for me. It's not something I've specifically sat down and been like, I'm gonna be an EU caster, I'm gonna focus on the EU region, but a CIS as well. I mean, that kind of comes with the EU parcel, but CIS is EU. Sorry, yeah, I said EU 90%. It's definitely EU/CIS 90%. Probably 50-50 between those two as well. Again, the Russian region is it's a little bit harder to keep track of, but individually the players, like I know a lot of the big and up and coming players in Russia as well, who I think could get a shot. That said, I didn't have a clue who. Well, I did know who Epileptic Kid was. I'd seen him play, but never expected VP to take him up. That was an interesting one.
I mean, this like the point is if you can, I mean, especially when it comes to CIS, EU is kind of well known to the broader public, I think, but for CIS, I think probably 50% of casters, when they introduce a CIS team, they just say they're aggressive. Wow. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
CIS aggression. Amazing. Like, so if you can be a person who says actual meaningful specific things about a particular CIS team or particular CIS player, suddenly you've distinguished yourself as a person who actively knows the scene rather than just like relies on the lazy tropes of CIS teams are aggressive and don't have good leadership. Like everyone has heard those things a million times. And I think that it shouldn't just be in your casting. It should spread to your Twitter presence as well. Like you should be the guy that people recognize as, hey, he tweets about CIS players I've never heard of. Because what's going to happen then is when one of the more mainstream casters has to cover that team, they're going to go check your Twitter and see what you said. And I can guarantee you this happens because like this is a role that I've played in the industry for a few years now. Like it's one of the most meaningful things I do. People look. I mean, for me, in my case right now, it's mostly when it comes to controversies. Every time there's like a Dota controversy, everyone comes to see what I'm saying because I've got controversial opinions or whatever. Like you can make that your thing, that you're the guy who has opinions about CIS Dota, because nobody has any interesting opinions about CIS Dota except for people in the CIS scene. The English speaking scene, people say the most dull, boring, rehearsed stuff over and over and over again. So I think that would be cool. Like
yeah,
I think
no,
and
that's really solid advice, and I will probably actually do that.
I mean, I'll personally look. I'm gonna follow you on Twitter right now, and if I might, in 6 months' time, if you're not tweeting about CIS players, then I might just unfollow you because that's I need this resource in my life.
Fair enough. I'm happy to be used by you, Scan. I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people come to me for memes. My Twitter's been has kind of taken off in that direction for a while now. I don't know. I actually got a job offer. I won't say who from, but I got a job offer to come and do social media for someone just because of my Twitter memes. So I never knew that we're living in a dank timeline where you can
No.
from tweeting dank stuff.
I mean, that's what people are interested in. So people want memes. People go on Reddit. They want memes. They don't want your fucking analysis. What do you think people have time to
Right?
read?
Yeah. So people when they hear something controversial, they first go to Scant and have a look at what his controversial opinion is, and they come to me and see what's something stupid which I've drawn a picture of it or something. Actually, I came up with a really good one during my cast day, and I've completely forgotten what it was. But I gotta try it. And now I gotta try and remember that.
Okay. I guess we can finish now. We can cut. We can end. We've been talking for.
Yeah. Right. See ya.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, guys.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably the longest episode now, but it was.
Yes. That
It
was the goal.
was-
I've been
Also the
watching,
best
like,
one.
a crap ton of like Joe Rogan podcasts. So like, yeah, I actually did that. Just one more thing was before my trip to China, where I was doing some reporting there, which was hella fun, by the way. I literally watched like 5 Joe Rogan podcasts over the case of like 2 days. It was crazy. I was just watching them, just like whatever I was doing, I had it on the background because I genuinely think Joe Rogan is like the best interviewer ever. He's just an incredible interviewer, and I just wanted to kind of tap into that energy. So even on the plane over, I was just listening to his podcast. So when I come on a podcast, I'm just like, all right, let's get this going. I want to see how long we can make him go. But yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I could go longer. I just need a break. I've also not had dinner today. So
No, I haven't had dinner,
Mm.
and I think I have a very hungry girlfriend downstairs as well.
all right. Thank you for being on as a guest. Maybe
Oh, you're
again
very
in the
welcome.
future.
Maybe.
We'll see. We'll see.
Gotta up the pay, I think.
As if there's pay in exposure, minimal pay in exposure.
Yes, I'm enjoying the exposure pay. That's what I'm here for.
They will be on your bank account tomorrow morning.
Sweet, cool. What's the conversion rate to pounds?
I mean, there isn't because pounds are monopoly money.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the topic we never touched. Brexit. Well,
I
I'll have
mean,
to come in next week to talk about Brexit. Easy peasy. No, we're not tackling that
Alright.
now.
I'm out.
Not tackling
Alright.
that now.
I'm done.
All right. Bye.
I just went. See ya. Thank you for having me.